So the first challenge is making sure that all the stakeholders you work with, being either designers, developers, product people, think that the English users sometimes it's just a minority of the user base that you have.
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, translation, and global communication. I'm Caterina from Anderton, and today our founder Nicola Calabrese will host another engaging episode exploring the world of UX localization with Stefania Russo. In this episode, we will unpack the art and science of tailoring user experience for global markets. Stefania is the head of UX content at Glovo. She has become an advocate for integrating localization with user experience principles. Stefania takes pride in her role and is encouraged by increasing awareness of how localization and user experience work together. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Let's dive in.
Hi, Stefania. Nice to have you here.
Nicola.
How are you?
Good. And you?
Very good. So today we're going to talk about UX localization. So would you mind briefly explaining what we mean by UX localization? Because not everybody in the audience might be familiar with that term.
Yeah, UX localization means basically adapting the user experience to different markets. And basically it's what localization has always been about. But lately there has been an increasing interest and awareness about user experience and its positive impact on a product. So I'm really happy to see that localization and user experience are finally closer together. The core of UX localization is giving priority to the experience of the international users right from the start, from the development process.
Can you, briefly go a little bit more in depth about what user experience in general? What do you mean by that specifically? Just to be super clear what we're talking about right off.
Yes, well, user experience is a very wide concept that implies different also disciplines. There is the user research, product design, and content. So user experience itself is basically tailoring a product or experience to the needs of our user. Basically allows a product or a business to have a user-centric approach. We are, of course, the business will always want to sell products, but we always, in order to enter a market, to go into a market, to sell a product, you need the users to interact with. So it's the best way to go around it is building a product that can actually solve a user need. And this is the core, solving user needs and allowing the user to navigate smoothly in a product or application.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Yeah. Thank you. And what do you think the most common challenges you might have when adapting the user experience for different markets?
Usually the common objective of all products and businesses is guaranteeing that all the users in the markets they are in have the same positive and seamless experience. But of course, guaranteeing that users around the world have the same great experience, it's not an easy task. It's not an easy objective to reach. The first challenge that I've been seeing the past few years is that it's changing the mindset and the practice that usually a product is designed or coded always with English in mind. The first challenge is making sure that all the stakeholders you work with, being either designers, developers, product people, think that the English users, sometimes it's just a minority of the user base that you have. So that is the first step. Once this is clear, there are several challenges that a product needs to figure out in order to have to be able to be used in multiple markets. And these are kind of internationalization guidelines that should be followed ideally right from the beginning, but that even if implemented later on can actually improve the product and its adaptability to actually work well in different markets. For instance, the first consideration is that all the languages are on average 30% longer than English. So it's super important that designs and the code is flexible enough to allow for that text expansion. We have languages that are right to left, so text directionality should be allowed from the code and the design at the same time. Beyond that, there is the consideration that graphics, visual icons are not always appropriate to all the markets and cultures. For instance, a very easy example is the thumbs up. the gesture is usually considered a sign of approvals in Western cultures, but in some of parts of the Middle East is an offense. For instance, you need to take into account the colors. Colors don't have the same meaning across the different cultures. And when you start designing a user interface for a global audience, maybe you just don't want to rely on a color only to transmit a status or a meaning. It's the best practices, for instance, is integrate the color with a textual support. Another thing to take into account that is a challenge sometimes is the typography and the readability. It's, for instance, in between the lines of a paragraph, you need usually to allow more space, because if you change from a Latin alphabet to a Cyrillic one or any other one, then they would need more space, and in order to be able to be read correctly by all types of users. And then, of course, there are the classic localization one, who are like which are number conventions, the currencies, the time date format, the plural form. So all of these, if they are tackled right from the beginning, can allow are challenges that can be solved in a kind of easy way and allow the product to be scalable for multiple markets. Ideally, they should be included in a design system that is accessible by the developers, designers, and everything is actually figured out in a systematic way. But yeah, definitely there are a few challenges. But if the mindset is changed, everyone knows that product is going to be used by a lot of cultures, then all of these challenges becomes like part of the job.
How did you go about like changing this mindset? What would you what kind of what did you communicate probably about all this list of potential issues? How did you manage to make people?
It's basically you start detecting a few behaviors, a few issues, and then you start like your awareness talk and you say, hey, look, this doesn't work like that, because then you see the text expansion, the design is broken, because usually everyone approaches the localization team, say, hey, the translation is too long. It doesn't fit the design. It looks better in English. So yes, but most of the languages are longer than English. So what can we do to make it work? It's basically a matter of education, of really explaining why something doesn't work and proposing a solution. What can we do together to solve that? And it pays off. On the long term, it pays off. And when you start seeing that designer and developer comes to you, say, hey, what shall we do? Or we are building the accessibility guidelines. What can we include from your perspective? Then, of course, it's a matter of always informing people, because I'm placing the localization team as the expert, the ones that actually care about the international users.
Yeah, the international champion. Yeah.
Yes.
How do you prioritize which market to go in or to start localizing into, or do you just go and do all the market at once? What's the best approach for you?
Yeah, of course, every company here is different, because the type of business, it's really the one that determines which market you want to go, depending on the competitors who are in that market. And for me, what I've seen is that there is a huge difference when the company is an only digital online business compared to companies that have ground operations. Online business, I don't want to say it's easier, but you can actually say, okay, I think in this market we have some possibilities and any other reasons. But when there are ground operations, their localization is not the decision maker, in the sense, okay, I think we should go and build a business in Poland. Of course, localization is part of the new market launch as a part of a working group. But the decision to enter a market when there are live operations going on is made by legal, government. You need to take into account government policies. So it's very common. There are so many stakeholders involved that you cannot just say it's our decision to go into that market. But anyway, localization, of course, plays an important role, because I guess no one wants to enter a new market, but with the campaigns in English or the marketing campaigns in English, or the application, or either the other way around. You have market and PR in place, but then the product is not localized. So localization is a need to enter a new market.
In your experience, were you ever involved, let's say, we support more languages in the app, let's say, rather than the website, and it's a way also to test grounds before you go all in with the, let's say, localizing website,
exactly.
marketing materials,
So for instance,
getting salespeople?
Totally. For instance, when we have launched new markets, there are markets that's okay. We don't need the website. Depends, of course, on the type of business. But you can actually say, okay, I just need to localize the main app, but not the ones that are other platforms that are live. It's in order, when you take this decision, you need to work a lot with the local teams from the specific market to understand how the users behave in a market. There are countries where they prefer using the website, others that prefer to use the application, and then you can make a decision. Maybe there is no need to translate all the FAQ page because no one in that market ever checks them, or I'm just inventing. But and especially it's very valuable, the support from the localization team when there are countries with multiple languages. There you actually can do, before launching, you do a research, which is the one that is most spoken, the one that is used more in a written format. And there you decide if you go with all the languages, with just one of it. And then over time, of course, also the user base is always changing. Also the political and geographical situations has an important impact there. And then you can, for specific countries, you can add or remove languages, or decide to localize more material, or the other way around.
And this, in a way, in a bit connects a bit to this and to what you mentioned at the beginning, the user research. Like in specifically, if you can briefly clarify what we mean by user research, especially when we talk about UX, and how it is connected with localization.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting topic, the topic of user research and the collaboration with localization. And I actually think it's it's growing more and more across the industry. So user research, the main objective is understanding really what are the user needs, how the user interact with a product, with a feature, and they use tons of different research methodologies. So it's a super important topic, and the research and the testing about content testing, it's growing topic.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you if there's any other, let's say, strategy that you recommend to test and validate the localized product afterwards, after localization.
After localization, okay. Yes, there are a lot of the standard UI testing techniques that are well known, like functional testing, qualitative testing, depending on the product and on your needs. You can set it up right from the purely linguistic stuff to the usability of the UI itself. You can test different. An important thing here that you need to have a testing environment. You need a team of QA testers who are not the same translators, ideally, and you need to have a very efficient way to flag and fix all the issues depending on their severity. Sometimes it really depends on the product and the team capabilities there. Lately also there are a lot of translation management systems. They have also in-context translation available, which I think it solves a lot of these issues that can catch up front during the translation instead of later on after the translation is delivered. In many cases, I also found that in the smaller companies, sometimes you don't have a testing environment that can be used for localization testing purposes. In this case, the localization team can get creative and find solutions. We always are creative around that, and we always find solutions. For instance, in some cases, in my experience, we created some regular audits of the live application. Because if, for instance, you have in-context translation, but then you really want to see how the user are interacting, you can have the same figure of a QA tester, but running a specific audit on the application in the country. And then you can decide access, so they don't need to buy a product, but they can go through all the steps, and you can test the entire journey, or aligning with your product stakeholders. If there is an important launch, you can regularly test specific parts of the application regularly. And then this is super useful. I actually like these regular audits, because then you are able to identify, of course, linguistic issues. You identify and you fix them straight away because you have access to the linguist. But it's interesting to spot all the technical, it's either design or development issues that cannot be spotted if testing environment is missing and is not part of the regular release, which is actually lately a very common practice with all the agile methodologies of continuous development from the software developer's point of view.
And with the regular audit, how often do you run them usually, and how do you identify the scenarios that they should run and test?
So, for instance, you can run maybe the full app, maybe every quarter or every half year or every 6 months. If you are aligned with a different product team, then for every part of the product, you can decide, okay, we are going to test this specific part every month. So it really depends on the priorities of the company, your team availability. Sometimes you can just say, okay, I will just run a overall check every 6 months and that's it. Otherwise, you can run audits, smaller ones, but more frequently. Sometimes what we did was also prioritizing a set of languages and countries. Like, okay, we have the tier 1 languages and countries that, okay, these ones need to be prioritized. We need to be audited every month. The rest can happen even once a year. It should always be included in the audit.
Yeah, because I wanted to follow up with something similar in the sense that, yeah, you have maybe several markets to maintain, like constantly keep updated. You might have new features rolling out regularly. And so do you have any recommendations like how to avoid scalability issues when it comes to updates, maintenance of like multilingual software?
Yeah. So in that case, the super important item to take into account is that localization needs to follow the software development cycle, meaning that the collaboration between the software development team and the localization needs to be like one of your first priorities. You need to understand how the the development team works, because if they are following Scrum, maybe they are delivering every 2 weeks. They're following Kanban, every day there is a key release. And you need to establish a process that works for both parties. So the objective here is to create a continuous localization process where developers do not have to wait 1 week to get the translated keys, or they do not have to release in English and then days after the app is available in other language. Otherwise, the user experience is poor. You need to create a process where aligning with their cycles, you find a way to be able to release every day, every 2 weeks, or 1 week, or every 2 weeks, you release some features, but they are released in all languages at the same time. So this is the objective. In order to achieve this, it's super and make it scalable for if you are in 20 or 40 markets, the tools play an important role here. You cannot think of managing tons of UI strings without any string management tool or a TMS, translation management system. Otherwise, it's too manual action. You would need, I don't know how many translation project manager to find the keys here and there. And usually developers are way more than localization resources. So it's impossible to keep up without automations in place. Super important is also that any string management tool is connected to the development tools, being them GitHub, GitLab, and having ideally API integrations where anytime a key is submitted, a pull request is submitted, then you receive it. Then it's not really scalable to send. Developers are hundreds of developers that every hour of the day they submit pull requests, and then localization cannot just go and spend every day just pushing for translation. You need to create a process that is scalable for you as well, for the sanity of the localization team, to actually create a process where you either create like a bunch of requests every day, every 2 days, 2 times per week, or once a week, depends on the volumes of the application.
You mean like
this is like
grouping?
Yeah, batching
you mean
them.
like
So
grouping all the? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So imagine that you receive hundreds of PRs every single day, and in order to submit them for translation, you need to do some translation project manager, localization specialist need to check them and submit. Or even if there is an automatic submission to the translation tool, it's also interesting to put a bit of order there. I cannot say what is best or what not, because every company is different. But you need to find a way that is efficient also for the localization specialist there. And yes, I would say that align the process efficiency and tech automations are really key in order to run continuous localization that is scalable.
Oh yeah, completely agree. Yeah, because if you get like every single string, you get it as a separate key and you have to send it back and you have to do it manually. I don't know how many Excels you might need for that.
No Excel, please.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help companies translate their content into results. Get in touch if you want to know more. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. See you next time.